Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Jesse Sutanto. Jesse grew up shuttling back and forth between Indonesia, Singapore, and Oxford, and considers all three places her home. She has a master's from Oxford University. When she's not writing, she's gaming with her husband, or making a mess in the kitchen with her two daughters. I love that. Welcome, Jesse.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So fun. Okay, I devoured your book, devoured it. I had so much fun, and I have a few little, well, you already heard me do my Monday quote with it, so I know you, but I'm going to have to read that again because it's so fun. And can you tell our listeners a little bit about I'm Not Done With You Yet?
So I'm Not Done With You Yet was kind of inspired by an argument that I had with my husband about tidying up. I was so annoyed. After that, I went and wrote basically what ended up being the first chapter of the book, where the main character has an argument with her husband about tidying up. And after that, I was like, this is actually pretty good. And so then I went and wrote a whole book around it, because everything I do out of pettiness. And that is the first thing you need to know about this book. Is that it's a very petty book. So it's about Jane, who is a self-diagnosed sociopath. And she meets this beautiful, brilliant, charming, absolutely perfect woman that she then becomes obsessed with, because Thalia is everything that Jane has ever wanted to be. And then, of course, a lot of shenanigans happen.
Yes, that is totally true. I mean, well, I love that the story is inspired by a fight with your husband, because we all have those, and it's a great source of material. It's funny because the husband is, I mean, it's obviously just the starting off point, because the husband really isn't that big a part of the story. The story is really, as you said, about Jane and Thalia, and to a lesser extent, a third girl. But so tell me, as you obviously the fight with the husband makes sense to me, but what about the sort of the real seed of the story between the two women? Is that an experience you've had, or not this, of course, but you know what I mean? The sort of toxic friendship. Tell us, where that came from, if you can remember.
So the main twist, which I'm not going to give away, but so I always had this twist in my mind, and I was like, oh, I really need to find a plot now so that I can use this twist. And that was actually really how I came up with the whole story, was because I just knew that it had to be about two women, and that things were gonna go a certain way. And then, of course, I feel like most of us, both female and male, can probably relate to the experience of having a really unhealthy friendship.
Yeah.
That's really bad for you. And so I really wanted to kind of explore that, and also explore the feelings of kind of being torn between jealousy and admiration,
Right.
for your friend. I think a lot of us also can relate to that. So that was basically how the story came about.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think it's fun. So you've had this twist in your head for a while, and it was a matter of finding the right book for it. That's so fun. Okay, so and this is my first book by you, and I loved it. So I will absolutely be looking forward to reading more. But I have seen, of course, all the Dial A for Aunties and the Vera Wong.
Oh, thank you.
Is this a departure? Because those look a little bit lighter, or maybe I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, those are totally very fun. They have murder in them, but it's very lighthearted murder.
Yeah.
There's such a thing.
Yeah, I know. I think there is, but I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Uh, but actually, psychological suspense thrillers are my bread and butter. You know, they're my favorite genre to read and hail them. I would say maybe 75% of the books that I read are suspense thrillers. But I just never had the courage to write one. And it wasn't until my really good friend, Lori Elizabeth Flynn, who the book is dedicated to, really kind of pushed me into writing one. She was like, well, I'll be with you every step of the I'll hold your hand, just do this, you can do this. And yeah, it's all because of her. So it's kind of ironic that like this book about toxic friendship actually came about from a really good friendship.
Right.
Very good supportive friendship.
It's nice that it's not dedicated to your toxic friend. I think that's important, right? She
Yeah.
knows that this is that, and I think had heard a little
Yeah.
bit about that from May Cobb, who I know is also a good friend of yours.
Yes.
So that's exciting. Okay, so now the aunties, all those books have done amazingly well. I can imagine this book is going to also be a huge success. Are you going to go back and forth, you think, or do you now you're like, no way, I got dark suspense in my blood, and that's what I'm gonna do now?
Oh no, I'm totally going to stick with writing multiple genres because I don't know about you, but like after I wrote this, I was like, wow, that was a really dark space that I
Yeah.
was inhabiting for a couple of months, and I'm ready to write something lighthearted. So I believe after this, I wrote my young adult rom-com, um, and then that was just exactly what I needed. And after I wrote that, I was like, okay, well, I'm ready for a little bit of murder mayhem. So I really like kind of hopping around.
Yeah, doing something different. So that, I mean, it's nice too, because it seems like it's easier to do now. Publishers are more accepting, and that is really nice. So can you talk about like Jane and Thalia? Jane obviously sounds like came first because she was the woman who had, was in the who was arguing with her husband about being tidy, which is totally a thing between husbands and wives, I have to say from experience. So, but so then how did you develop those women to be so, different and yet to work off each other so well?
um, that's a good question. I feel like a lot of Jane's anxiety, I kind of based off of like my own, anxieties and just thoughts that I often had when I was in situations where I felt very out of place. Um,
Mhm.
so for Jane, it was very easy to kind of just draw from my own personal experience and then just kind of kick it up a notch. Thalia was a little bit harder because she it's not every day that you meet a Thalia. So I, I was kind of like thinking Margot Robbie, because just so perfect
Yeah,
and
yeah,
amazing,
yeah. I
right?
can picture.
And
Yeah,
you
I can
can
picture
really tell
Margot
it has
Robbie.
such
Yeah,
depth. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So I was kind of like channeling that energy when I was writing Thalia.
Yes, and then Thalia she's interesting because there's so much more than meets the eye with her, which I love
Mhm,
how you sort of over the course of the book we really get to know who Thalia is, and because Jane is mirrored against Thalia, actually we learn a lot
mhm,
about Jane that even Jane didn't really know about
mhm,
herself, which I think is so fun, and it's true of that of that age, right? Um we really learn so much about ourselves from other people when we are in, basically high school, right? Um,
mhm.
there's this great line. This starts the book. It's chapter 2, and it says, "The thing about crazy bitches is there's usually some man who's pushed and prodded and gaslit her to that point," which I love. I was like, that is so Anyway, that is such a great line. And I think there's a different, I mean, the voice, and again, I haven't read the A is for Aunties yet, but there's such a great sort of very candid voice about sort of real truths about humans and about women and about marriage and about friendships. And I really, really enjoyed, that. And then and this is an interesting thing too that I found really true, and I wanted to talk a little bit about this, which is the sort of, it's almost like when we see beautiful women and we're envious, it's almost like an attraction. It's not that we're necessarily like interested in being intimate with them, but there's something like like women's bodies are so beautiful that there's almost this sort of sense of like, that you're sort of in awe also of their body. And there's this line when Jane is looking at Thalia, and she says basically, while men lust after the soft bulging parts of the female anatomy, the breast, the ass, we women notice the hardness, the places that signify control, discipline, the clavicle, the shoulder blades, the cheekbones. Thalia's collarbone is defined in a way that makes me swallow. I imagine myself running a finger along its hard length from the bottom of her neck all the way to her shoulder, where it juts out into a single knife point. I love that because, of course, it's also somewhat foreboding, and there's alliteration, and it's true. I think what we are attracted to, it's why like women look at, really sort of thin women in a different way that men look at really thin women. So I thought that was wonderful. And when you're picturing these sort of interactions and living inside Jane's head, I'm curious to know what's your process. Are you, do you write sort of a thin first draft and then go back and bulk it up, or are you sort of you write the depth as you go?
No, I write it as it is mostly now, because I've had over 10 years of trying to get published and failing. So I've written so many books, and now I feel like I write pretty clean first drafts. I would draft. I think my editor, she added some, she wanted me to add like plot points. She wanted me to add an epilogue, but most of the writing is about the same, I would say.
So tell us a little bit about your path to publication, because a lot of us have spent a lot of time obviously trying to get published before being published. And you said you wrote a lot of books. How many books did you write, and how long did it take?
So it took me about 10 years to get my first publishing deal. And I had written 8 books by then. But what actually got the first publishing deal was my 5th book. So that was just how long it took, for the agent process and like submissions and all. Like I had finished my 8th before my 5th one sold. And so it was like a really long and twisty journey. And I was very dramatic and like gave up a lot of times where I was like, that's it. I'm no longer writing again.
Of course, it's so hard, right? It's so hard. So then books 6, 7, 8 subsequently are being published or have been published. So
no, actually, I think so. Book 8 didn't get published. Book 7 did. I can't remember what was book 6. I don't think it got published either.
You're like, I have so many books that they're just like buried in the backyard. That's good. Sounds like you're also kind of a fast writer.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Which is great. That's a great thing to be in this business. So, and so I wanted to talk about sort of this idea of the competitive nature of female friendships, right? So that's the quote that I read out loud on 159. I love this. I'm like, here I am. I like to tab. I always tab books where there's wonderful quotes I love. Yeah, all my books are tabbed because I'm like, oh, I want to go back to this place. But that is, it's, and this is the quote that I read on my Monday quote of the week. If you missed it maybe 3 weeks ago, even. I have always found female friendship fascinating, the way that from a very young age, girls are encouraged to see one another as competition, just because of how sexist many societies are. And therefore, there's only ever room for one girl at the top. So that's interesting. Like, as that, and you have obviously lived in a lot of different places. So you've had a variety of different cultural experiences. Is it true? I mean, do you feel like it feels true to me from my limited experience?
Yeah, I especially when I was younger, like in my 20s and my teens, even the questions that we got asked, it's like, like, oh, which girl do you find prettiest? It's always like a competition.
Yeah.
And then especially like when I took women's studies classes when I was in college, and then it kind of really opened my eyes, because
Yeah.
then I really saw how the media kind of fuels that along, and in every, like, for example, like action movie or whatever, like you'd have a whole great cast of men and then one single female character, like just one. And then the men all have like, great backstories. They have like their own identities, there's like the nerd, there's the action hero, there's the whatever. And then the woman is just the hot woman, like she
Right.
has no identity aside from being a woman. And I just kept seeing that over and over, like even in the games that I play, there's always just the one woman and then five other men.
Right.
And so I was like, well, no wonder women are pitted against each other, because there's never enough space for us. And I feel like that is changing now, slowly.
Yeah.
So I do feel really hopeful for younger generations about that.
Yeah, you have daughters, I have a daughter. We have to be hopeful for them. Now tell me, I think, where are you right now? Are you in Indonesia?
Yes, I am in Jakarta, so it's
Okay.
9:20 in the morning. I'm in the future.
You are in the future. Okay, yeah, because actually that was what it's here. Here it's 8:20 at night. And it is funny to be, because it's not, I don't normally do this at night. You can see how dark my office, my space is tonight. But I was like, I knew you were ahead, but I forgot how far ahead you are. That's amazing. And so um did you go then to university in Oxford? Is that where you spent
Yes, so I did my
years?
master's in Oxford, and I did my undergrad in Berkeley. So I've lived
Yeah.
both in the US and the UK. So I feel familiar enough with both places to write about them, because I'm very lazy. I don't want to do any research. So my
Fair.
characters are always like basically in either of these places.
That's so funny. I grew up in Oakland, in Oakland Hills. So that was my home.
Okay.
And now I'm in Montana, which is very, very different. So
Yeah.
okay, and then there's one more thing I want to talk about, because of course this is the other thing that happens to women, and I'm going to do it to you, because of course it's everyone is going to say, they've said this to me for 20 years of my publishing career. How does somebody so sweet looking come up with such dark stuff, right? We get this, like, they never ask that to, like, Michael Connolly or any of the men, but of us, they ask that. And I had this, the quote is from your acknowledgments, which I love.
Mhm.
I always love to read these, and sometimes I read them before the book even starts. And you say, I think it's next to impossible to exist in this world as someone who identifies as a woman and not be enraged time and again. This book is the result of all the anger and bitterness at the inequalities of our society. And then you talk about how emerged you got in Jane and Thalia's mind. And I guess I was asking, is that sort of a way to, is writing for you a way to sort of work through the things that happen to us in real life that we can't really control?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably why there's so much murder in all of my books, even even the fun, lighthearted ones. Um, And it's so funny because I said that to my friend Lori Flynn. I was like, you're like the sweetest, nicest, most supportive person I know, and then you write like the darkest, twistiest, stories. And then she said, and I still remember her answer to this day because it was so funny. She was like, well, it's the ones who keep it all inside that we need to be worried about. So
That's
so be worried about like the romance writers.
right, right. It's true, right. It is. I think there is something really cathartic. And I don't, and also
Mhm,
probably a way of working through our own sort of fears and like you said, insecurities. I mean, we get to use our own stuff in the books. Um, and your books tend to be, it sounds, I mean, most of them
mhm.
are female, but I mean, are
Yeah,
female focused, which is fun.
I really do feel like it's kind of my way of, uh, like you said, it's very cathartic. Annoyed by the number of female characters in books and movies that just get killed, to further the plot. That kind of killed off quite quickly and carelessly.
Right. Yeah, we're sort of we're extras in a male driven plot. A lot of stories are.
Hmm.
And it's,
Yeah.
and like you said, there's not as much backstory, there's not as much focus on the women. So it's fun to write stories where it's
Hmm.
really all about women. Like, Jane's husband is really, he's the female equivalent
Yeah.
in this story as as the stories you're talking about.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
Which is great. I mean, that works. That's fine. It's turnabout is fair play. So tell us,
Hmm.
okay, I tell us now a little bit about, the books you have out right now, and then what's coming next.
So I have a whole bunch of books that have already come out. You can see them on my shelf
Yes.
there. And they're all very different. We have like children's fantasy, young adult suspense, young adult rom-com, and a whole bunch of adult mysteries. Um, so they were all so fun to write. I recently uh, handed in a completely new genre. It's an adult love story. So I'm very excited, but that won't be out until 2025 for Murderers. So I'm very excited about starting work
And
on that.
another, okay, so so sorry, you cut out a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to the world for my Wi-Fi, which is Montana Wi-Fi, and in the evening, everybody is busy streaming Yellowstone or something, so it's hard sometimes to get a good signal. So you have written children's fantasy, YA fantasy, YA rom-com, adult fun mysteries, and now a very dark suspense. You just finished, it sounds like, an adult love story, so an adult romance. And then, but first you have coming up, what's next? Another YA book?
Yeah, I have another YA rom-com out, I believe in November or December.
Wow.
So that'll be out next.
And then you'll have another
Yeah, so I'm
adult
very excited.
thriller. So fun. And then what's after that?
So, dark adult suspense and Dal A for Aunties 3, which is
Okay,
going to be the final installment in the Aunties book.
that's so exciting. And are your girls old enough to read your stories?
Not yet. The oldest one is 7, fantasy to her, and she just didn't understand. So I was like, okay, let's wait until you're like 9 or 10.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's for the yeah, for the why for this book, maybe I always told my daughter 30, and she started to read them when she was like 20. So I think you got a little ways to wait on that. Um Now, Jesse, I thought maybe, did you come to Thriller Fest this
Yeah.
year?
Yes, I did. I went to Thriller Fest and it was so fun.
It was so fun. I'm sorry we didn't get to meet. Are you going to come back maybe next
Mhm.
year?
I don't know yet. I'll have to wait and see what I get invited to next year.
Yeah, it's a very long trip. Well, it's so fun to talk to you. I'm sorry our Wi-Fi connection is not perfect, but I did absolutely love your book, and I love your candor about sort of the things that drive, that drive women, and how, the way that we end up feeling sort of positioned against one another, and also sort of the competition. I think these are real issues, and for me to read, and this is it is a page turning thriller, but to get to those points where you sort of feel something that really strikes you, like that is true, that's also such an incredible treat. So it's a wonderful, fast book. Congratulations on all your success, all your books. I'm going to have to take whatever you're taking to write quicker. So
Thank
I'm going to,
you.
I'm going to call you on the side and say, what is it? What's your regimen? What vitamins are you on? So thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Yes, do.
Everybody, this has been Killer Women with Jesse Sutanto, all the way in Indonesia, and you can almost hear the distance in our conversation, but she's an incredible author and such a fun book, and what a joy to get a chance to talk to you. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.